So this is the paper that I'm using. I think it is called the Princess cardstock. Let me get it over here where you can see it. Princess Sampler, and it has some blue and some red and some fuchsia and some various colors, and we'll be looking at those here for our project in just a moment. So these are the colors that I have chosen. There are 6 altogether, as you can see. And the card that we're going to be making is actually this one. So we're going to use this green color as our base, and then we'll just kind of fill in the others as we feel necessary. So you ready to get started? Okay, so first thing you do is go to Design Space. You're going to click on New Project. Hold on. Let's go to Projects. Let's go to Thanks. And there's our card right here. If you look at this card in particular, it's going to show you a lot of things that you may want to know about. As you can see, it is free from Access. There's no cost as long as you're an Access member. If you're not an Access member, it will probably charge you, I don't know, $1.99 or so. But this is the basic card we're going to make. The description tells you a little bit about it, tells you the finished size. You can print it. I highly recommend you print it because it tells you the materials, the tools that you need, as well as how to go about assembling it and things of that nature. What I did is I printed this out, and then I actually crossed that out. Instead of cream, I put whatever the color it was I was using. I think I've got brown here. It's going to be our green or something like that, and that's sort of the way I designed it. So whatever paper you're using, you just look at this and replace these items with the actual colors you're going to be using. Makes it a little bit easier for you. And then of course you want to customize it. Another method you could use is, instead of customizing it, you can print this out and then go to the one that I have for you in the link below. And I'm just going to pull it up under my projects at the moment. And I've already changed the color of the card itself, but not the envelope, so I can show you how. So the best method to do this is to customize. And I changed it based on the color pack I was using. You're going to bring this over in here. And then you're going to click this area. First thing you've got to do is detach. The reason you have to detach, of course, is because it's got the scoring line. So don't move anything, simply detach. Now click on the brown area. Click up there in the top and make it green, or whatever color your other one is. Okay? When you finish changing the color, you want to highlight everything in there, and you want to attach again. Okay, everybody with me? So what you end up having here, I'm going to change this so you can look at it just a little bit better. There you go. It's a little smaller, but at least kind of puts it all in one perspective there. When you're ready, you simply click Make It. And as you can see, it's sorted by the colors that I had given all the pieces. A couple of things I want to point out to you. See these little bitty ones for like pink and yellow and blue and purple. If you have some scrap paper, you could certainly use those there instead. Remember, this card is colorful. The only real important pieces is these two, the envelope and the card, the base card, and this one, right? That's the only larger size pieces. So you could really use any colors you wanted for those little pieces to make it colorful. Once you've got your mats ready, now a couple of things about mats. One of the mats that I try to use when I'm using Cricut cardstock, most often it's 80-pound paper, so I use the green standard grip mat. If you're using a 65-pound paper, I get that at like Hobby Lobby, in the packs, Michael's, Joann's, any of those places that sell the paper in like the packs is usually the 65-pound double-sided type thing. I always use the blue light grip mats for those because the paper is not as heavy. If you try to use the green mats on those, sometimes they'll really get nasty and hard to get off, and it curls and it's just really ugly. So don't do that. Use the appropriate mat for the type of cardstock you're using. And I have a post on my blog that talks about the different mats and when to use them and how and what's best to use them for. So when you have your mats ready, then you're ready to cut it. I like to have, when they put mats on sale at Cricut or Joann's or just anywhere, I like to buy, several packs of them so that I can kind of line up my paper anytime I'm ready, right? And just have it all ready to go and cut at one time. So if you have enough mats to cut these, then good. That's a great deal. If you are using scraps for these smaller pieces, simply, put them up here in this top, the scrap in this top left corner, and you'll be fine. Doesn't matter what you're using, okay? So we're ready to cut, I'm sorry. So click continue. Now I don't have a machine hooked up to mine today, but this is where you would choose your Cricut machine, right? I'm going to choose my maker in this particular case. A couple of things may be kind of hard to see, but I want to show them to you anyway. Let's see. I'll make it a little bigger so you can see just that piece. Set material. You're going to set whatever, depending on you're using. You're going to set the material depending on the cardstock you're using. If you're using the Cricut cardstock 80 pound, then you use the medium cardstock setting. If you're using the 65 pound from Joann's or Michael's or wherever, then you use the light cardstock setting. Once you have set that, then you click next and you go to the load tools and mat. Now with the maker, it's going to tell you to use the scoring wheel. If you do not have a scoring wheel, you can simply change that to use the scoring tool. The interesting thing is, with the maker, you can use the scoring tool where the pen goes, and the blade, where the blade goes, and you don't have to change it out. If you're using an Explorer or anything else, you're going to put in whichever one it's asking for first, okay? And it will tell you when to change out from the scoring tool to the blade. Okay, so when you're ready to cut, go ahead and cut your project. Pause the video here. When you have finished cutting your project, come back and we'll show you how to assemble it. So, how to do this? Let's try this. Yeah, it's still 4 minutes to cut it out. Shit. Okay, that's not right. So let's go back to that. See how this works. This is better. So, what we end up having here is I left these on the mat for a reason, because I want you to be able to see what happens and the best way to do this. This one is kind of hard to see, but it's very intricately cut, so that's going to take some weeding. Let's start with the envelope, which is not quite as intricate. It's scored, okay? The best way that you can take these off of the mat and not lose your mind is to turn them upside down. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but start bending it like that. And literally roll the mat away from the card, okay? And this is where I use that little spatula if I need to pull it completely away. Then the mat is away. You haven't lost anything. Everything is all good. Now sometimes on this thicker paper, as you can see, it's not completely detached here. You can pull it, but that's not always a good idea. So what I do is I turn it upside down and I take my knife and I just kind of give it a nudge. So like it's right here. So I just kind of go along that little, just like that. Just kind of give it a nudge, if you will. And that way it cuts it away, and it's just not going to hurt anybody or anything. And then it'll just come right off. Okay? So, let's start with that. Okay, so, if you'll, as you can see, these are scored, right? So you just, wherever it is scored, you simply want to bend there, okay? I have a really cool little tool that you can use anything you want. I have something called a bone folder. I don't know why. But basically, I fold on those curves, on those score marks. And then I take this little guy and just make it real heavy, right? So fold on the score marks. And just drag it along. And then fold on the score marks. And drag it like this. This is going to make the perfect envelope. I want to apologize for how my hands are in the way in this particular section. This is like one of the first videos I ever did, so please forgive me for my hands. I apologize. Now that you've got the envelope fixed and it's scored and it's in the right place, you can glue it. So what I do is I get my art glitter glue. Some people use double-sided tape, and there's all kinds of other things you could use, but I prefer the art glitter glue. First I decide which is going to be the top and which is going to be the bottom. I'm thinking that this shorter piece is going to be the top of it, so I want to leave that open, right? You want to be able to, okay, so the trick is that you've got to glue this to this piece, but not to this piece, because you've got to be able to put your card in there, right? So you just want it to this piece right here. So what I do is I actually just put my glue right here. Just right along here, okay? Don't want to put it too far up over here because I don't want it to hit that either. So I'm going to do that on the same other side here. Just like that, okay? And then you just want to attach it like, kind of hold it for just a second until it's nice and done, and making sure that it's not stuck to anything but these tabs, okay? Then of course when you're ready, you can, you know, put double-sided tape or something like that. Now the next thing I wanted to show you was the intricacy of this piece. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's a bear. So again, turning the mat over and rolling the mat away. Okay? And when you do that, a lot of times those little bitty pieces will stick, little bitty pieces will stick to your mat and come across a lot better. Okay? Sometimes that doesn't work. Then if it's on your mat, the easiest thing to do, as I showed you earlier, is take that little scraper guy. As you can see, I've got a few things on my mat. I just take this little scraper and kind of scrape them off into the garbage or over to the side of my mat here or something like that. One thing that as a newbie I learned very quickly was that you have to keep the plastic on these mats, because if you don't, they will get all icky, and I mean icky. So I usually keep a couple of these extra just in case I lose one. But they do get icky, and then they get dirty, and you can't, everything sticks to it, and it's just awful. So make sure that you usually put these back on your mats when you are finished. That way little things like that don't stick to it. Okay, so now, as you can see, I've got little pieces here that still need to have some weeding done, it appears. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off and remove this. Now, a lot of people don't necessarily do the same thing I do, but I like using my art glitter glue for just about everything. So I like to keep my little tip in it most of the time. The next thing is I always keep big enough scraps, because you never know when you're going to need a piece about this size. I mean, this size, right here would make a card almost. In fact, it would make the size of a card. So, you want to keep it just in case you need it. Then the rest I throw away. I don't keep little bitty pieces, but I do keep the big pieces. And I have this nice little container that I keep them in that I will show you later. So, now I have this card. Now the fun begins, because as you can see, only part of it has kind of come out. You can take your fingernail and just kind of do it like that, or you can take one of those nice little weeding tools that I told you about earlier and just kind of push it in, Just kind of see if you can get a hold of it. Sometimes it's not completely done. You want to be real careful of ones like this, right? Because you don't want that to break where it shouldn't. So I usually try to turn it over and take it one at a time. This is also where I use my knife, like I did earlier, and just kind of give it a little shove, make sure that it's cooperating like it should. It's okay if the back of it looks like that, because that happens. As you can see, it did not hurt the front. Okay? But you do want to be careful about that. So try to get this where you can see it. Okay, that came out okay. Sometimes it just requires a little shove, and that's it. Sometimes it requires a little more than a shove. Better. Did you see that? Okay. So I'm just going to take a minute and kind of go ahead and weed this through. You can read it with me, or you can skip forward to the next part. At this point, all I'm doing is, just continuing to weed out the little bitty pieces here. And one of the things that came to mind when I was doing this, I remember, is I was like, these are kind of like hanging chads. Now that's dating me just a bit, but for those of you that may remember, many years ago, there was a presidential election. And in Florida, the way that they had to do ballots was they would punch through, just like I'm doing here, for whoever they wanted to be president and vice and so forth and so on. So when they did that, some of the little pieces were still hanging on, like what I'm doing here with the weeding, and they called those hanging chads. It was a really, really big deal there for a while. And I mean, the presidential election was held up because they couldn't decide whether to count them or not count them. And it was just a really, really big deal. And now, of course, it's very comical. Back then, it wasn't so funny. If you want to know more about that, of course, Google hanging chads, CHADS, and I'm sure that that'll be there. But all I'm going to be doing here is just to continuing to weed this until it's all completely weeded out, and then we will put the final touches on the project. So what I've done here is I have all of my little pieces, the little colored pieces, together, and I'm just simply going to glue those onto the back of the thank you card. And you can do it sort of any way that you want to, but I just kind of lay them down where I think they might go, and kind of get a picture of where it's going to be. And again, I apologize for my hands being in the way. And then after I've put them all there, then I simply glue them down to the right place, and we'll have our card. So you've glued the back part of it, and you the red part on the back, and you end up with your complete card, and envelope, of course, that we started with. See, as you can see, I put just enough glue on the back to kind of hold it on there so that it's nice and pretty. I folded on the score lines, and then there you have it. You see a little bit of glue that hasn't dried yet. Don't worry about that. I will show you the finished product after it's dried, and it looks much, much better than that. I hope you've enjoyed this quick tutorial. This shouldn't take you very long. This is provided by Fairy Dust Inspired. Come and join us.